I'm Ryan Drapella. I started woodworking when I was 16 years old at $75 in my parents' horse barn. And 10 years later, we've now grown the company to 23 employees and doing a couple $1 million a year in sales. And I want to help you avoid the pitfalls and failures that I've seen from fellow woodworkers and also myself that I've done. So here are 7 reasons why most woodworking businesses fail. And stay tuned to the end because we'll actually go back to my original shop at my parents' horse barn, and I'll go over the final rule over there. Very excited to show you all that, and stay tuned. Thanks for watching. So before I go into our first point, I do want to preface that this is not for the hobbyist, the guy that just wants to make a little bit of money on the side. I'm talking to the person that wants to have employees and grow the business and make real money and have a lot of employees and have a big manufacturing shop. And so if that's not for you, these rules will help, but I'm really intending these to be for the guy that wants to grow and lives and breathes woodworking, okay? So let's go to reason number 7 on why most woodworking businesses fail. And that reason is the sheer fact that they don't treat it like a business. Now that's a very simple rule. Let me go a little bit deeper. Let me go a little bit deeper with this rule, okay? So to me, woodworking is one of the most competitive businesses to be a part of and the most competitive industries to be a part of, the wood industry. Why? Because a lot of times the barrier to entry is so low. I mean, a lot of people, and I'm talking about like making cabinets and different products and stuff like that, like smaller products. I'm not talking about making paper or owning a sawmill or making crown molding or something like that. But more or less, most people in their lives know somebody that knows how to work with wood or knows how to fix stuff. I mean, I can take $1,000 right now or $500, go to Home Depot and start my own wood company. You can't do that you can't do that in any other industry, right? So the barrier to entry is so low in the woodworking industry. If you don't treat it like a business, you're gonna fail because there's so much competition in it. But the rewarding part of the woodworking industry that I love is that it's humbling, it's good work, you're working with your hands, not a lot of people do it anymore. And so you feel good about yourself at the end of the day that you're doing something, you're making a product that has value, that improves people's lives, right? And I'm assuming you're making a product that has value, that does improve people's lives, and you're not scamming people, because you will eventually fail if you do that. Now, once again, if you do not treat it like a real business and you have this timeline where you want to get rich quick, you are going to fail in the wood industry. I've been doing this 10 years, and at year number 8, I was finally able to afford a rip saw, and at year number 10, I was finally able to afford a double-sided planer. It was my dream, but I've been pursuing that for 10 years. I still have another 30 years in this industry, 40 years in this industry I want to be a part of. So however long it takes me to get to my end result, I'm okay because I am treating it like a business and I have this really long timeline, right? That brings me to point number 6, which is work ethic. Now, this is once again a very simple one, but let me explain what I mean by work ethic. If you're not working 60 hours a week, you will fail when starting a wood business, right? I'm still working 80 to 100 hours a week now, 10 years later, even though I'm only 26. So I have a lot of time on my hands. I don't have a family, don't have kids yet. I am getting married soon, so that's pretty cool. But with that being said, I'm still working 80 to 100 hours a week, even though I have 22 employees and a bigger shop. I still have a lot of ambition, a lot of goals, and so I'm still putting in the work so I can grow this business. And if you're just starting out and you're competing with somebody like me or another person in the wood industry that's still working hard, which most of them are because it's a very competitive industry, if you're only working 40 hours a week, you're going to get stomped. There's no possible way you're going to win. If you're working 60 hours a week, I would say that's about average. You need to be about 80 hours a week. And when you're working, you're actually working. You're not messing around to be able to make it in the wood industry. Okay? And if you're watching this far, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to the channel because we will be growing this channel and it will be the #1 woodworking channel on YouTube. Very excited about that. We are very small right now, but I am just getting started and there's a lot to come. Reason number 5 is cash. Now, in the world of business, in any business, the #1 reason businesses fails is usually cash flow management. So I am talking about that, but I do want to kind of hit something that's really specific for woodworking. So if you don't know what cash flow management is, you need to look it up. Do your own research on that because cash flow management is typically the #1 reason businesses fails because they can't survive the dips and the valleys and peaks and all that stuff of a natural cyclical cycles of economics and economies and stuff like that. But I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about cash for, in the woodworking world, if you're in the infancy stage, this is what I mean by cash. So cash in the infancy stage is I started off with $75 personally with my business. And now it took me 5 years to really buy $50,000 worth of equipment, right? So now I built up sales while I was doing that, but if I had a little bit of cash to start off with, I would have probably saved myself about 2 years of work by going out and buying the equipment that I needed to make the things I needed to make at the time. But I had to slowly build up. I bootstrapped my way up, and that way is a good way to do it, but if you had cash, you can save yourself that time. Another thing that I mean by cash is you see all this material and stuff around me. If you do not have cash and you have a big job coming up and say you need to buy this bundle of lumber or this pallet of plywood, and you have all of this wood right here, let's say you get the job and you're making all this stuff and the job falls through, and now you're out the $3,000 that it took you to buy this wood, or the $30,000 it took you to buy all this wood back over here, right? You have to be able to weather that storm and either make products out of it or just hold that, which again, that's cash. You don't really see it, but that's cash value that lumber cost. Or if the order does go through, but they don't pay you for 90 days or 60 days, you're going to have cash to weather that storm. So that's just basic cash flow, but that's kind of what I mean by weathering the storm. Right now, the economy is not so good, so you're going to have these woodworking companies that are not booming right now, they're going to have cash to weather that storm. If you don't have cash, cash is king, you will go out of business. Reason number 4 that you could fail in woodworking is skill. So I mean this in 2 different ways. Whether you have a lot of skill or no skill, you could go wrong either way. So if you're very skillful and you are making something that cannot be duplicated because you are so talented, you cannot hire a whole bunch of employees that can build whatever product you're building. Versus if you're not very skilled at all, then if you build a not very good high quality product, then you're not going to make it either. So the rule of thumb is do what you're skilled at and hire for what you're not skilled at. So I'm standing by my CNCs right now because I'm particularly good at designing. I'm particularly good at designing product that my CNCs can make, and I kind of have a hunch of what products would sell good on the market. I'm good at designing them. I'm good at running the CNC machines. So therefore, my skill set for my company is running these machines. I hired out people that are a lot better at other things than me, such as graphic design and marketing. And now I'm actually hiring out a little bit of the programming on the CNC. I have Anthony's actually filming this. He's been my very first employee, and he actually runs these CNCs for me now because I can use my skills that I'm better at elsewhere in the company. So whether you have a lot of skill in a particular area or no skill in a particular area, you need to do what you're good at and hire for the best. And you have to have a little bit of intuition and know what you're good at and a little bit of self-reflection. But you will fail ultimately if you do not hire for what you're not skilled in. Now we're at reason number 3 and why most woodworking businesses fail. And that is failure to get the right product mix. Now, we are sitting in my inventory room right now. One of my inventory rooms. We have about $300,000 worth of product in here, and so we're going to pan and kind of show you that. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a little bit of a fire hazard. You got a lot of wood in one room, but it is what it is. That's why you have insurance. I hope it doesn't burn up. But with that being said, people don't understand their product mix. So if you're putting all your eggs in one basket and selling a whole bunch of products to one person, then you're putting your business at a huge risk. Vice versa, if you only have one product and you're trying to sell it to multiple people, once that product fades out, you're ultimately going to fail. Now, people told me that. I started my business with making a whole bunch of different products for a whole bunch of different people, and then I got focused on one product for multiple people. And I knew that if you ever studied a bell curve, I knew that that product was at its peak and when it was going to start going down. And so I had a whole bunch of other products in my back pocket that I was ready to launch and target those exact same customers. So now I have a whole bunch of multiple different products that I target all of my client base that I built up from that one single product. So there's a little bit of wishy-washy here. So when you're starting out, if you're first starting out, I would get really good at one thing and market that to a whole bunch of people, or make multiple things for a couple different people. Never let anybody have a whole bunch of leverage over you. But in general, you want to know your product mix. Are you somebody that makes a lot of products for a lot of people? Are you somebody that makes a very few products for very few people? And you kind of got to understand that. I know some people that they make a lot of products and they also try to do retail, and also try to do wholesale, and also try to do commercial, and also try to do this. And you can do that. You can diversify when you get bigger, but when you're starting out or when you're a mid-sized business or a small business like mine, you can't really diversify a whole bunch. You need to pick something, and you need to pick your product mix, pick your customers, and really focus on that. And that's going to help you not fail. It's very important. Once again, a lot of these sound like very basic things, but the more I can reiterate them, the more it's going to help you not fail. And hopefully you'll have all your hair by the time you're 26 and it's not falling out kind of like mine is, because I've been through a lot of these failures. That brings me to reason number 2. Now this reason was the number 1 reason of people that I've talked to in the industry on why most woodworking businesses fail. It's not my number 1 reason, but it is most people in the wood industry's number 1 reason, and that's not understanding what the customer is willing to pay for and what the customer is not willing to pay for. Now, what I mean by this is behind me, you have this book-matched Texas pecan dining room tabletop that I'm making for somebody right now. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be awesome. We got epoxy pour. It's 3 different pieces that are book-matched. It's absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. And then you have this cedar box right here that's rustic and is made with just some finish nails and stuff like that, laser engraved, okay? Now, what I mean by not knowing what they're willing to pay for and not willing to pay for. Most woodworkers in the woodworking industry, when you're just starting out or getting your business going, you want to do everything perfect, and sometimes the customer doesn't want perfect, they want just good enough, right? Like this box right here, I do not have to make it out of pecan because they do not want it out of pecan. They don't want it out of maple. They want it out of cedar because they're not willing to pay for making that out of maple or something like that, something of that nature, right? They don't want me to fill up the gaps with epoxy, versus this customer right here is willing to pay for all this, and I understood that going into the project. Now, you may be this is kind of hard. Your ego has to be put to the side a lot of times in the woodworking field because you're really good, most likely, and you want to build stuff like the most perfect way, right? Like you care if this thing you're making is 2 inches thick or 1 inch thick or it's made with 3/4 inch plywood, but the customer probably doesn't care. Maybe they don't even see it. Maybe it's just because you're like, yeah, that's me, baby. That's what I do. That's my ego getting in the way. But if the customer's not willing to pay for it, it's either eating out of your pocketbook or it's just eating out of your pocketbook, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So what I would say about that is understand what the customer wants. If the customer wants a nice cedar box, make them a nice cedar box. Don't do anything over. Don't overkill it. Now, if you're trying to impress them and they're a giant client, then you can overkill it, but you can't do that for very long. If the customer wants a nice pecan table and they're willing to pay for it and they're willing to pay for a hand-rubbed oil finish because that's what they want, and you talk to the customer and you understand what they want, then do that. But don't assume that the customer cares as much as you do, because you will be wrong 99% of the time. Be sure to talk with the customer, understand what they want, understand what they do not care about, and it's going to help you price your products better, it's going to help you make your products better, and it's going to help you make more money and not fail. Now, let's go over to my other shop, and let's go over my favorite rule, my number 1 rule of all, and let's see where this all began, because it is really humbling to go back there. It's really cool to go back there, and it's actually my parents' house, my parents' horse barn. So let's take a trip. Okay, so before I go with the last and final rule, which is actually my favorite rule, I did want to show you that yes, this is indeed my parents' house. This is a family farm, which I grew up on. And before we go on the horse barn, I just kind of want to show you that yes, we have chickens. We have our dog pens over here. We got, I don't know, you may have heard that rooster or not. We have goats over there. We got horses in the pasture. And as you're continuing on, this is where it all started for me. Whenever I was 16 years old, in the very back, which we're going to walk over to, this is where it all started for me in my wood shop, in my woodworking journey. It started right back there because all I had was a little bitty saw, and and you would think it was less cluttered. It was about this cluttered when I was doing it. Okay, so this is where it all started. And now we'll actually go around to the other side of the shop, but what I want to emphasize, and now I'll say the number 1 rule, is you have to focus on sales versus efficiency. So you have front end and back end. Back end is efficiency and optimizing and getting everything perfect and making that product as efficient as you possibly can. And then you have front end. You have to have sales, Because if you don't have sales, you can't make that product. You don't have a shop that can make that product. So back in my other shop, where it's super efficient or more efficient than this, that could never happen if I did not have sales. So sales is the most important thing. Now it sounds very cliche and it's like, of course that's the most important thing. But what I mean by that is, if you come back here with me, see, this is clutter, it's not very efficient. Does it hurt? And do we make less money whenever we make a product? So let's say now we actually spend an extra 30 minutes because we have to look for something, so we make a product for $100, and instead of making $50 on that product, now we're only making 40, right? Well, in time, you're gonna get more efficient because as long as your sales keep going, your efficiency is kind of an inverse graph. So as sales continue, you eventually hit efficiency, but then it's never gonna quite make your sales because then you wanna be growing. You don't wanna be the most efficient and stagnant at the same time. So you wanna be continuing with your efficiency as your sales are growing. So it's never gonna meet in this graph, right? And maybe I can throw a little graph up there so you can see it. But this is where it all started, right here at this saw. I wanna go over here to show you a little bit more of the shop, but this is where it started with $75 when I was 16 years old. I cannot tell you how many countless nights I spent in here, missing out on parties, coming back from college, not going to game days, I would work 80 hours a week in here while I was going to college. In high school, I would work every single week, and I would skip class to come work in the shop. So back to rule number 7, which was the very first rule I talked about, was you have to treat this as a real business and can't treat it as a hobby. And from the very start of starting my business at age 16, and this is not my very first saw, this is now the second saw I bought. This was $400 when I bought it. But the Harbor Freight $75 saw that I started the business with, I still have, and I'm keeping it. But yeah, so you have to treat it like a business. So you have to understand what the customer wants. You have to do all of those other rules that I talked about in order to not fail. Because if you're extremely efficient, but somebody's working out of their shop and busting their tail and working 80 hours a week and treating it like a business and knowing what the customer wants and knows accounting and puts in the work and puts in all the time and follows up with their customers and does all those good things, they're gonna beat you, even if they're working out of a shop like this. Or even if you're working out of a shop like this, you can beat me if I'm lazy over there in my shop, and let's say you don't have a shop that big, or maybe you do, you can still beat me. I'm still working 80 hours a week to 100 hours a week to try to grow my business. So let's go over here to the other side of the shop so I can give you a little bit more of the tour, because I think it's pretty cool, and I think it kind of humbles me coming back in here to know where I started and kind of know where we've been. It's just really cool. And I still use this for small projects, but I like using my bigger shop because it's just, obviously, it's more efficient. So let's go. So I wanted to show you over here because this is what I poured after I poured this slab. This used to be 2 horse stalls right there, and this used to be all dirt. And after about 5 years working in the business, I was able to save up enough money to pour the concrete to make this side. As you can see here, there's probably some different animals in the background. There's some horses over there. So this is really where it started. So if you're in a garage, if you're in your parents' horse barn or in a barn or in a storage unit, it's all possible. You just got to keep saving, keep doing the discipline, and just keep working at it. And let me show you the CNC room before we end this video, because it's really cool, and it's kind of where my my CNC room. So it's really cool. Good. So this is the original CNC that I bought when I was 19 years old, after saving up all of my money and after buying the cheapest stuff I can buy, eating Top Ramen while in college, all that stuff. This was the very first CNC that I bought, and then this is the second CNC that I bought. And I built this room whenever I was 19 years old, poured the concrete, and I was 21 years old. And when I built this room and poured the concrete and did all that, and once again, it was just through a lot of hard work and saving. I wish there was a secret sauce. There's not. It's a business, and you got to put in the work. So this was really cool, and both of these, I'm not going to tell you how much they made me. I will in a later video, but you would not believe the amount of revenue that these 2 CNCs got me. With that being said, I hope that all 7 points will help you avoid failure. I hope you learned a lot in this video, and if you're just starting out or thinking about starting out, do not be discouraged. You keep at it, you keep grinding, you keep working, and all of this can become a reality. I'm gonna keep grinding, keep working, because my dreams have not been met yet, and I'm still dreaming and I'm still living the dream, and I absolutely love this industry, love my life, and thanks for watching, guys.